ArcGIS story maps are designed to tell stories about a geographic phenomena, and typically we use and center our story around a map. You'll see an example of a story map about tropical storms on the right side of the panel. We'll jump into that in a moment, but story maps contain blocks of media, and those blocks can include a wide variety of things like infographic and text, obviously maps, images, video, audio files. So we're going to explore a little bit of this content and realize that story maps are different from Map Maker in that story maps encompass the map with a variety of supporting material and content. These are ideal for freestanding or self-standing instructional activities as one example. So we'll take a look at this active tropical storms map. I want to just pop this window so we can get a better look at it. And in this story map, we've got our title, our header, and you'll notice right away that we've begun by organizing the content using the 5E instructional model. So we begin by engaging kids with the basic question about what's going on right now. This is real-time or near real-time data in our map. And of course we can see Hurricane Gabrielle in the Atlantic, and we can click to discover what's going on with Gabrielle at a particular moment in time. And then of course, because our maps are real, because they're interactive, we can just pan over here and take a look at the West Coast. See here, looks like Narda would be our storm in the Pacific. So interactive, real time. If you pull this story map up, say in a day or two, this map's going to look different. You might even see some new storms, depending on the time of the year you see this map. We continue down our story map, and again, we're providing images and text to help point our investigation into the map-based data that we see. We provide some questions to help guide student thinking, and again, continue through our 5E model. So we end up down here in Elaborate, where we're taking a look at the various categories of hurricanes, and then we finally end up, as we wrap up our story map. We offer some next steps where you can actually look at this particular map back in MapMaker if you prefer to use some of the tools that are available through that platform. So we'll come back over here to our slide deck and realize that story maps are very flexible and can really accommodate a wide variety of use cases in a typical classroom. Most story maps are created by authoritative users and organizations around the world that use the ArcGIS platform. So you may see content from the U.S. Geologic Survey, you may see content from FEMA, you may see content from a Fortune 500 company. There's a wide variety of authorship within story maps, and certainly there is some outstanding content worth using in your classes. So as I mentioned, ideal for organizing and presenting instructional content. Story maps can also be used as a peer reading activity where you have some interactive maps with that reading, but you can also use them for virtual field trips or for doing data collection, or one of my favorites, using a story map as a framework for presenting advanced technology. We'll see an example of that in just a moment. Story maps can also support formative assessments, asking kids some basic understanding questions within the story map so they can test their own knowledge. And of course, students can create their own story maps. They can create their own story maps to represent work that they've done, projects they've done. Even think about these as a potential tool for presenting reports, presenting demonstrations, and so forth. Let's take a look at this next story map about rock types. This webinar, of course, is being presented live in the fall of 2025, and rock types is probably going to be at the top of everybody's mind in the very near future in terms of our earth science annual cadence of instruction. This particular story map begins like the other one did, using a 5E model and we present an interactive map which is clickable, so we can do some investigation about rock types. The story map itself also allows us to direct our readers to specific areas of the map. This particular story map integrates some of that advanced technology I was talking about. Story maps allow for embedding of content from other sites. So in this case, we can use our phones or other QR code reading devices, and we can actually grab and display an augmented reality object using these QR codes. In this case, of course, we're looking at rocks because that's what our story map's about. Again, we can use our guidance here to direct us around the map, and then you'll see that in this particular case, we've got some embedded formative assessment that's asking students some basic questions about what's going on in the map. Again, more QR codes, more objects, AR objects, more map guidance, and formative assessment. So it's a really interesting way to take a look at something that maybe doesn't engage all students with the greatest of excitement, rock types, but we believe it's an interesting platform coupled with those advanced tools to really engage kids in this case, rock types. So we'll take a look at another example. Again, we mentioned earlier that these can be very useful tools for helping take students on virtual field trips. So many of our kids really have little capacity to go beyond their communities. And as we think about exotic places, in this case like a lava tube, what percentage of your students will ever end up being able to explore a lava tube? So one of the interesting things I think about story maps is we can present a field trip as a story. And in this case, we can take kids to the big island of Hawaii. We can take a look at some of the lava tubes that are explorable or have been explored in that interactive map. And then of course, as we go down our story map rather, we can also begin to see some of the interactive media that helps support that particular virtual field trip. So this is actually a 360-degree camera going through the lava tube. So I'm going to leave it panned back so we can see a little bit better. If you happen to have things like VR headsets in your class, students can load up a story map inside their VR headset and then launch media like this that is VR compatible. And it actually presents a fully immersive view, in this case, of the Thurston lava tube. So you can see forward here on our map as we go down through the tube. Again, that idea that we can use story maps as a holder, as a way to present advanced technology that is sometimes cumbersome to integrate within our day-to-day instruction. More virtual reality content, and then of course a direction back over to the Hawaii Pacific Parks website. So as you can see, story maps allow for a really wide variety of use cases supporting your earth science content, whether it's delivery of direct content through reading or instructional activities, or whether it's through the presentation of some of these advanced tools. One thing we have done to try to help make story map discovery easier for classrooms is stand up a site that's called Story Maps for Schools, and you can see the URL on screen. We'll also include it either in the chat section of the webinar or in the follow-up email to you. But Story Maps for Schools will give you some links to some of the story maps we've been looking at today, but more importantly, we'll also get to discover some of the other content that is available that we think is going to be highly relevant to your classroom work. So this is a gallery, and I've already sorted it for earth science content. So I think we're going to take a look. Just at another example story map, and this story map an introduction to sea ice, maybe a topic most of us won't touch until probably the springtime. But I wanted to give you an example of a story map that is really pure authoritative content. We're talking about imagery, in many cases, beautiful satellite imagery of the topic of sea ice, and text that is appropriate for high school level readers. And as we scroll down through the content, we can take a look at how ice changes both in the Arctic and the Antarctic, both seasonally and over decades. So we get both those perspectives of the topic. And then as we near the bottom of this work, we can see how those changes are occurring year over year. I don't know, hopefully you can see the year in the slider. We have some charts and graphs to support some of those data points. And then of course, essentially where are we going from here? What does the future hold? What does all this stuff mean? So again, StoryMaps as a support for pure content, really supporting reading, if you will, in the scientific area, which I think is very important for many of us. We'll take a look at one more story map, slightly different topical area. Again, uses some VR technology. So for those of you that have headsets, that's great. You don't have to have headsets to use this content, though. You can consume it straight in the browser. Again, this one isn't written necessarily as a piece of reading, but it is written as an instructional activity. So we start off with a 5E model, and this story map looks at landforms in North America. So this is a virtual reality viewer made by Esri, and we have basically pre-built a map and loaded it onto this 3D globe, and it is clickable, so we can find out what each of these segments mean. But we also have bookmarks here, so if we want to jump to different parts of North America to get a sense of what's going on, this is a very nice way to look at landforms in a very structured and guided manner. So your kids maybe not going to get lost going down a pathway where they see, say, a shiny object. We can launch this in a separate viewer. Ideal, again, if, say, you're using a Quest headset, MetaQuest headset, or something similar to that in terms of technical support. So we'll continue on with our activity, again, in the 5E model. We've got some formative assessment here that's baked into the activity. So this is designed for students to consume on their own, at their own speed. And then, of course, there's some questions in here that you as an instructor can use to help with a summative assessment, if you so choose. So again, StoryMaps supporting a wide variety of content and presentation types for your classroom, for your earth science classrooms.